Issue number 8 is just as good as issue number 7. We have Etrigan, the Monkey King, and Swamp Thing having a battle royale, and as Abby and Paul try to flee, the action and horror melded together in this works so well. Welcome to Unbuckled Comics. If you're new, welcome. There's a liability form on the back table next to the bug spray. The swamp does tend to get a little bit buggy out there. If you're returning, thank you for your continued support. I am Unbuckled Cape, your host of this comic book review podcast, and today we are taking a look at the Saga of Swamp Thing Volume 1 by Alan Moore. But before we head out on patrol, let's gather some intel first. You probably already know it by now. I have a link tree, linktr.ee/unbuckled comics. That is linktree/unbuckled comics. You go over there, you can find my Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Instagram being the more valuable of the ones, as well as the invite to the Discord that I have over there on Discord. That is where you can make episode comments and play in our Capes detective game where we have a mystery character every week, and the person that guesses it right gets to pick the next character as well as the clues, and talk about comics or movies or your dog, or how you want a dog but don't have a dog, or how you don't want a dog but you have a dog, or how you just don't have animals, period. Really, we talk about whatever we want over there. And that is also where my solicitation episode has kind of moved. I don't do an episode, but as I go through and look at the solicitations, if there is, I take just screenshots of the new stuff coming out and I post it over there. So it is a way for you to get through and see the new things that are being published uh, quicker than doing it yourself, basically. So that is over there. It is a great community. I highly recommend joining us, and you can join over at Linktree/Unbuckled Capes. That is linktr.ee/Unbuckled Comics. I think I said Unbuckled Cape last time. It's Unbuckled Comics, I promise. Um, hmm. And outside of that, I do not have much for this intro, guys. Um, we are I am just really kind of plugging away at the show. We have some interviews coming up. Let me whip out my schedule here. We are sitting at Swamp Thing. Next week, we get a sidekick episode with Storm Beagle, aka Sam. He is from the Retrotopia podcast. So, bringing him on the show, that means I will have had all three of the Retrotopian podcastians on the show. So, good stuff there. First 2 weeks of August, you're getting Batman, Black Mirror. Uh, I think the next one, I'm up in the air on what I'm doing. I'm either going to have Mrs. Cape on, and we're going to talk about her first comic book convention. That was the Wellsboro convention that we did a couple weeks ago. Or I'm going to release an interview with the gentleman that runs the comic book store that I frequent. How about you guys? You guys tell me what you want. Maybe I'll set up a poll in the Discord, and then you can go over to Linktree, LANK dot. Oh, I messed it up there too. LANKTR.ee/Unbuckled Comics. Join the Discord, and maybe you can vote in that little bit of a poll there. I'm definitely going to do that. Set that up as this episode is getting put out there. The last week of April or of August, geez Louise, is going to be Spider-Man Blue. I already have that review recorded and ready to go. Then we have Robin / Batgirl Year One is going to be the first weekend of September. The second weekend of September, we are going to interview Scott Beatty, who's the writer for Robin / Batgirl Year One. Really excited to have that. Gonna reach out to Mr. Beatty here again probably this week and just confirm that we are good to go for that. Then the third week excuse me, the third week of September, you get your Green Goblin case file, and that means we get to start another Unbuckled Comics pool. We're going to end September with Daredevil slash Batman, written by D.G. Chichester. And then October, we have all the spookies. We're going to do Where Monsters Lies. Then we're going to do Apollo Burning. Wait, I did this the other week. I said which one it was. And Captain Alcatraz, who is joining me for that episode, said that I said the wrong one. So I got to look for which one it actually is. Gotta find it. Gotta find it. Do, 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 do. Um, it probably would be easier to get up and walk over to my shelf and find the book. Okay, I found it. The Armory Wars, the second stage turbine blade. Captain Alcatraz is coming on, joining us for that episode. That's going to be a lot of fun, as this book is written by members of the Coheed Cambria band. He is a monster Coheed and Cambria fan, and he is going to explain what is going on in that book. I got a little bit before I have to pick it up and read it, so I will reserve and try not to jump to conclusions with that. Uh, yeah. So then we have finishing out October, the long Halloween. I'm going to do that. That will be a two-part episode. One, two, three, four. Oh, and then I do not have something tagged for the end of October. So if we may do Mrs. Cape in October and Comics Metropolis in August, or we'll flip it. So I think I'm still going to run the poll to see what you guys want first. But yeah, I think that's how we're going to do it. Whichever one loses the poll will just get bumped to October. We'll finish out October with Nothing Scary, ironically, right? Because that's going to come out 2 days before Halloween. But that is going to be how it is going to be. I do not have all of November panned out, but I do know that somewhere in the middle of November we are probably going to do Ask Unbuckled, as it will be the beginning of November is the 2 year anniversary of the show. So we are so close to 2 years. How crazy is that? And then I know that I want the end of November to be Godzilla, Here There Be Dragons by Frank Thierry. And then in December and January, got some stuff lined up. And then post January, I got a lot of fun stuff coming. So good things to come from now until uh, stuff lined up. I made that seem like like the show was gonna drop in quality majorly, but that is not what I meant. I have a lot of good stuff lined up that I'm excited for, and lined up hopefully through April if everything goes the way I would like it to go. I got some really good stuff all the way out to April of next year. So that is my update for you right now. What am I reading? I'm actually reading my first manga. I'm reading The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I am halfway through, maybe a little more than halfway through. I have the book sitting here. If I get everything accomplished that I want to get accomplished here, I might take a read before the boys get up from nap. I'm really enjoying it. Link is a little goofier than what I thought he would be. I thought he would be the silent stoic hero, and he's not. He's a little goofier now. I am just now entering the adult part of the Ocarina of Time, but so we'll see how the adult Link is. But Kid Link is goofy, but I've really been enjoying it. Um, Stuff for the show this week. I will be working on setting up notes for Scott Beatty's interview, as well as getting the case file written and set up. And then next week I will go back to reading, and I believe the next book I am reading is. I got to pick it back up again because I do not remember what the next one I'm reading is. Oh, Where Monsters Lie will be the next book that I read for the show, and then I will go on to Apollo. I did it again. Um, Armory Wars. I'll move on to Armory War. Coheed and Cambria book. Captain Alcatraz is going to have to carry that episode because I am so lost with the names of these things because it's the second stage, but it's the first book and yeah, whatever. Today we are talking about Swamp Thing, the Saga of Swamp Thing. I kind of bought this book a little bit on a whim, and I'm sure I talk about it in the episode. So why am I telling you now? Let's just jump on over to our review of the Saga of Swamp Thing. Over the past like handful of months of doing this and talking to people that are well versed in comics, I've heard a lot of people praise uh Swamp Thing, the Saga of Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. Uh and look, I questioned it, especially after the Watchmen experience. I thought this probably isn't for me, but at the comic book store that I frequent, the whole run is sitting there on the top shelf. It's been there for a while, and I just every time I see it, there's a nagging little thought in the back of my head. And this past free comic book day, I thought, you know what, I'll take a chance. I grabbed it and I decided to read it almost on a whim for the show. And the following week, I went up and picked volume two. So if you are a fan of Swamp Thing, you're going to like this episode. As I had already stated, Alan Moore is the writer. Again, Watchmen. Now, before The Watchmen, though, he did Swamp Thing, this book right here. And the thing about it is this was his first United States comic release. He did comic books, but they never were in the United States. So this was like his introduction to the American audience, if you will. Inker is John Peltlebean. Again, he worked on Swamp Things while it was at Titan Books before it was a DC property. Ultimate Marvel Team Up, Hellblazer, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, among other things. Uh, Tatiana Nude. Oh, I started writing someone else's name there, or it's Tatiana Wood. This is a creator, or I'm sorry, the colorist. Wow, I am struggling with my notes today. Animal Man, The Question, Sergeant Rock, World's Finest, Tarzan, and for some reason I put Sergeant Rock twice, so you can see how that is doing. Now, how about before we get into it, let me just grab water and reset, because although this is a horror comic, we do not need my presentation of this comic to be horrible. So, issue number one, look, it's a fast start. Swamp Thing is looking through a airplane wreck to find a body of what I assume to be an enemy. Arcane, I think, is the name that he was calling them. And then it quickly shifts over to a man and a woman. They are leaving the swamp and they're upset because of feelings that aren't mutual. They're in a vehicle and the woman wakes up and her top is unbuttoned, but still kind of covering her, implying that they had a moment together the night before, if you will. And then we move on again, and we're greeted by this drunk that kind of creates monsters. And he's learning how to control his power rather than banishing it, like he told his significant other or former lover. And then we make another quick jump to an older gentleman named the General who is hunting all of these people, Swamp Thing and the set of couples, so the four other people, so five. He's hunting all of them, and it doesn't really explain why. But we get on to the hunt right away, and the man and woman that were leaving the swamp narrowly escape an explosion that was set up for them in the hotel that they were staying at. And then the other couple, their whole house is blown up by a rocket sent sailing into their house through a helicopter. So then this like military group just hunts through the swamp and they pin Swamp Thing in and they gun him down in the swamp. And well, look, it was a very unencouraging start to this book. I, after reading the first issue, was I had so many questions. Who's the dead body that Swamp Thing was hunting? What happened prior to this? Why can this guy make monsters? And my main concern was I was really The only thing that I understood in it was when they were implying that there was sex involved, and the guy that can create monsters, his wife kind of leaves to go for a walk after turning him down, and he kind of creates this like hallucination for himself of a woman dancing, and like it was the only stuff that I got. But I thought, okay, well, maybe issue number two we get more backstory. I was just worried that it was going to be another Watchmen, like I still was, and thankfully it turns out not to be the case. In issue number two, the old general brings in Dr. Woodrue out of jail. I don't know who that is, but apparently he's relevant. A man with an odd condition as well, this Woodrue, he performs an autopsy on Swamp Thing and learns that Alec Holland, who is Swamp Thing. So my guess is in the previous run, whoever was writing it, wrote that Alec Holland was had this like mix of chemicals and had this explosion, and up until this point the other understanding was that his subconscious and spirit and everything that was Alec Holland turned into the Swamp Thing. After this autopsy, the Dr. Woodrue finds out that that's not the case. Alec Holland is gone, and Swamp Thing is just like a living plant that thinks and somehow melded with memories that Holland had. After learning this, the general ruthlessly kind of fires Woodrue, who has this condition that makes him sort of like a plant as well. And so Woodrue decides he's gonna set Swamp Thing free, and Swamp Thing ends up waking up from this like comatose state that he was in and roaming the office, finds the autopsy notes, finds out that he is not Alec like he has thought for however long. Again, there's a little bit lacking of backstory. And when he has this realization, he just like goes into an absolute rage and kills a general. So at the end of issue two, as wild and confusing as this might sound, the storytelling itself is very effective. It's fast paced, but not feverish. And there's enough information for me to feel like I know kind of what's going on. But it also, there's plenty of hints to know that, like, I don't know anything about the general. I don't know anything about Arcane, who Swamp Thing continues to mention in his inner monologue. I don't really know anything about Woodrue, but more is coming apparent about him, and it shows you that the past isn't going to be as important as what's the future holds for Swamp Thing and the other four main characters. We'll call them six. We'll call all six main characters, the four people, and then Woodrue. It sets up a future, letting you know just enough about the backstory without becoming a full on uh full on backstory. We don't have to spend a lot of time in the past because they are so worried about the future. And the art in this is really, really good, but it is very creepy and trippy, and that is where the horror element of this book lies, is in its art. Issue number three, Abby and Matt. Look, the Abby and Matt were the two that were kind of in the truck at the beginning. That they are not the married couple, uh, right? No, I lied. I lied. Abby and Matt are the married couple. I'm sorry. I apologize. Right? Yeah, 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 yeah. They go looking for Swamp Thing after he escapes the like laboratory where he killed the general, and they find him in the swamp, but he is like grown over and just kind of like become one with the earth, and they stand there and mourn him. This is about this whole issue number three is more of about Alex psychological battle for his own humanity as he goes through these horrible nightmares. And Dr. Woodrue turns out to be a small time bad guy in the DC comics. Floronic Man. Look, he's weird. It's hard to explain. He kind of looks like a plant when his fake skin gets wet and crumbles off, but he is able to dig his own roots deep into the swamp through Swamp Thing, and he taps into all the power that nature has, and he totally loses his humanity and gains this immense power. Issue number 4, Woodrue continues his power growth and he kills an entire town by using plants, like house plants. But like the house plants aren't like poison ivy house plants. Like he has them overproducing oxygen, and the overproduction of oxygen in these people's brain drives them absolutely mad, and um it's kind of crazy how it works. But then someone is too anxious and they try to light their cigarette, and then next thing you know, everything in this town is on fire, and he burns it to the ground. Which, sorry, I had my notebook kind of close to the mic there. Which is a wild villain plot that I have never seen done before, and yeah, it's crazy. So we kind of jump back into Swamp Thing, who is psychologically connected to everything, including everything that has to do with the swamp and the nature surrounding it, including Woodrue. And he searches his memory and determines that Woodrue is the cause of his recent pain. Woodrue's the one that did the autopsy, that wrote the notes. He kind of orchestrated Swamp Thing's recluse into the swamp. So coming back to life, he ends up pursuing him, and the U.S. government decides that this is too big of a threat, and they call in the Justice League. Funny enough, the Justice League does absolutely nothing because they can't go down there and battle him because of like the high produced oxygen, and like they know he's like they don't have any it's odd. They don't have any like bartering. They want to go down there and try to talk to him, but there's no reasoning. If they beat him, then it somehow kills all the plant on Earth, and he's an advocate for the plant life. And they have like this weird moral like conflict within the Justice League compound about what to do with this villain. So they basically just sit around with their thumbs up their you know whats, which is it's odd and kind of out of character. But looking forward into the future Alan Moore project, we kind of know what he thinks about superheroes anyway, so I guess it kind of makes sense for this writer. So issue number 5, Swamp Thing rises to stop Woodrue as, like I said, the Justice League just kind of sit on their hands, thinking Woodrue was connected to the world of plants. Again, it was, and they reiterated it twice, which felt a little redundant. But anyway, Swamp Thing knows he is connected to the plants, but he is also forcing what he wants done over the like production of the plants, and he is claiming that what he is doing is exactly what nature wants him to do, but Swamp Thing obviously is nature and knows that that's not true. So instead of fighting him, Swamp Thing is able to reason that, humans and other life forms turn O2 into carbon dioxide, and then the plants feed off of carbon dioxide, and through mitosis, photosynthesis. That's the word I was looking for. Photosynthesis. Here I thought I was going to sit here and sound smart for you guys, and I butchered that right up. Or is photosynthesis the sun? Anyway, um, so it kind of like sends Woodrue into this crazy off the handles, just wild. He can't believe that he is the evil mastermind and he's not doing exactly what nature wanted him to. And he like just freaks out and runs to the swamp and tries to cover himself up with fake skin that's not working. And when Superman and I think it's Green Lantern show up, he's basically just mentally not there, and he's like, "Hey, I'm a human like you guys." Like it's really really sad actually how mentally unstable this guy is, and they end up taking him to Arkham, and Swamp Thing returns to the swamp happy, knowing that he is not Alec Holland anymore, and he is just Swamp Thing. Issue number 6, we kind of return our attention back to Abigail, who is the wife of the guy that kind of creates these hallucination monster creepy things, and he's creepy, and she's in a bad situation. So anyway, we move back to her, and her husband is, like I said, still an absolute freak, creating like strange apparatuses, and he lusts over them, and it's so weird and gross. So Abby spends most of her time in the swamp until she, gets this new job, and this new job is working at a home for special needs children and orphans. This is where she meets a young boy named Paul, whose parents were killed by what they are referring to as a monkey demon that was brought forth by a Ouija board that was improperly used or something like that. I don't know. A man who seems to be able to see the future, which is odd, buys the same board at the estate sale and brings the monster back to life. Um, and the monster, when it comes back to life, it awakens inside the children's home, and it is really just like a white monkey that looks really creepy. And this issue number 6, this is where this book really picks up. The gentleman who buy the Ouija board is nothing short of a grade A jerk. He is so arrogant and looking at people, and he's like, "Well, you could buy that, but it doesn't matter because you're going to die later today." And he turns out being right. So that's kind of the future telling thing. He talks to Abby a little bit, and I think he tells her you don't go back to the children's home, and she does, and it's just weird and creepy and eerie, but it works so well paired with the art style that this has. It's of, I think this is late 70s maybe. And it's very creepy. The children's drawing of this monkey demon that is, I think, later referred to as the Monkey King, is very creepy in itself. The Monkey King itself is scary, and issue number 7 is easily the best part yet. The mystery jerk turns out to be Jason Blood. It's not how I picture Jason Blood, but so and that's awesome. Taking a character like Swamp Thing, and you're trying to gain a little more traction for this character, you take him and give him to a up and coming writer, Alan Moore. So Alan Moore takes and throws Etrigan in it, and that's awesome. So the Monkey King actually feasts on the fears of children, and Abby and Swamp Thing are in the swamp, and they're racing to stop it once Abby kind of figures out what's going on. And then we switch over to Abby's drunk husband, who leaves the house to find her after they have yet another argument. And the horror aspect in issue number 7 is on full display with, like I had mentioned before, the haunting children's drawing, and you don't know what's going to happen. And I actually expected there to be more death in this one than what there was. There is a glimmer of hope as a uh, car crashes, which was Abby's drunk husband, and the demon Etrigan crashing through the window. And issue number 8 is just as good as issue number 7. We have Etrigan, the Monkey King, and Swamp Thing having a battle royale, and as Abby and Paul try to flee, the action and horror melded together in this works so well. And actually, I'm looking. I don't have the book sitting next to me. Normally, I do these with the book right next to me in case I need to pick it up, but it is it's so odd. I actually haven't read a book like this before. We've done a review for Something Is Killing the Children, and that was like slasher horror. This is more of like a psychological horror, and the Monkey King will transform into what you fear, right? So it's kind of like Stephen King's It, where well, let me get through the rest of this. Through this book, I absolutely love issue number 8. I love Etrigan's rhyming speech that he does. Swamp Thing's simple speech. Abby and Paul's hysteria. Like, it all works so well and plays off of each other so well. It really is a joy to read, which is weird because I don't like horror stuff. Uh, and it ends with a twist that I did not see coming. The young boy Paul actually is able to shrink the monkey king by not being afraid of him, after it mirrors Abby's husband because that is what she's afraid of most. So, a little bit of foreshadowing to maybe what the next couple of volumes of this book has. And after the Monkey King shrinks down, Etrigan just picks it up and kind of comedically eats it, where and kind of wanders off, making a semi truce with Swamp Thing. And then the book ends with Mr. Cable, Abby's husband, Matt Cable, makes a deal with a demon as he's about to die in his car crash. And then as Abby is walking through the swamp, uh, he drives up in a uncrashed car and Abby gets in, and that's obviously where this next one is going, and I'm excited to see it because I do not like that guy and I think he's going to be a pretty good villain. Um but back to what I was saying about, this Monkey King, he transforms into what people fear, and with Abby, it was something obvious like her husband, but as it's going around to like kids and stuff, it's transforming into these grotesque monsters and insects and bugs, and I think it was it a wood eating bug for Swamp Thing? Like it was so well done and thought out that to have this demon like creature that can transform, and it works so well for the artist to be able to show the creepier side of things that they could draw. They very smartly didn't restrict themselves to having to draw just this monkey demon. And even though it was creepy enough, being able to have it shift into other people's fears really put the horror aspect of this comic on full display, while still having a good bit of action and mystery behind it of like what's going to happen, especially regarding Matt Cable. So as I finished reading this book, the final note I had for it was WOW, which stands for wow. Like, guys, this is such a good comic. I am so happy I bought this. Like I said, I went out the very next week and picked up issue or volume number 2 rather. And I'm not sure when I'm going to get to it, but I had to have it on the shelf and I'm excited to read it. Probably going to read it here. I'm not even gonna. I don't know if I'll do it for the show again, but look, guys, I feel like it has been a while since I've gotten to do this, but in conclusion with this book, it's funny because of how, I think I did pick it up for Watchmen. I think is where that one ended up landing for me, but Alan Moore's first foray into the USA comics industry, like, what are you doing? You need to go read Saga of Swamp Thing Volume 1. Until next week, guys, get out there and save the world, you bunch of heroes.